The opinions and recommendations expressed by Dan are his own and do not necessarily represent the opinions of this station or any of the show's sponsors.
Welcome back to Financial Issues. My name's Dan Celia. We are going to get to your financial questions, but we've got a full board right now. We have Twyla Brace. Twyla is president of Citizens Council for Health Freedom. Website is cchfreedom.org, cchfreedom.org. Twyla's with us every month on the third Thursday of the month, and we're going to take some questions that you have on your health care for Twyla. So we're going to go right to the phones. The number is 866-300-9298. Let me go to Angela. Angela calling us from Mississippi. Hi, Angela.
Hello. Thank you, Twyla, for being on. I need to know if, in light of the President's recent statements, and Ms. Sebelius is also, can I actually be required to buy insurance? And I need to know this because I have a financial assistance based on income at a hospital that treats one specific condition only. And in order to keep my financial assistance, I need something in writing to prove that I don't have to enroll in Obamacare. Thank you.
Good question, Angela.
That's interesting because I've had another call from somebody whose charitable program at a hospital was cut off because of Obamacare. And so she was forced into Obamacare or other coverage that she could not afford in order to be seen at her hospital. So the fact of the matter is that the U.S. Supreme Court said you cannot be forced to purchase health insurance. You do not have to be covered. You can be uninsured. But the hospital that you're dealing with may decide that because Obamacare is available and because you're already on financial assistance of some sort, because Obamacare is available, because you might actually qualify for Medicaid under the new expanded Medicaid. I'm sorry, I forgot which state you're in. I'd have to look.
Mississippi. Mississippi.
Okay. And so it's possible that you would qualify now, and they don't want to take anyone who doesn't have coverage of some sort in whatever kind of program that you have.
It sounds like Angela's issue, too, is that the hospital, because she's getting treated for a very specific thing that only one particular hospital is treating, and she's getting assistance for that treatment, the hospital doesn't want her to have to be forced to take, to enroll in any other kind of insurance, or I assume that any insurance it sounds like to me, is going to not cover her going to this particular hospital for this treatment.
And I think because we don't have her on the line anymore, it's a little hard to know exactly what that is. It would be good for her to get a few more specifics, but as a direct answer to her question as to whether she has to be covered, she does not have to be covered. Nobody has to be covered. We have the three legal alternatives to Obamacare, and they include private coverage, claiming an exemption, which there are a growing number of lists of those, and or going uninsured and paying the penalty. So that's the actual answer to her question.
And her hardship, she would fall under this 14th hardship, where she would just have to write in and say, I have a hardship, and state it, and that would be that.
Right.
Okay. Let me go to Sarah. Sarah calling us from Iowa. Hi, Sarah.
Hi. My question is, we do have health care through my husband's employer, but we've been wondering, what do you think the changes will be once the employer mandate is enacted?
The elusive employer mandate. So, because the president keeps pushing it back and now has pushed it back all the way through until the next president is elected for companies that are under 100 employees. And so the expectation from a lot of pundits and experts is that as the employer mandate comes in, more and more employers will dump their employees in a variety of ways. They could either tell them, go to the exchange here, there's extra money I'm going to give you every month, or I'm going to give you during a year, and you can go find your own coverage on the government exchange. Or they'll just stop providing insurance altogether because it is cheaper for them to do the penalty. Some companies won't because they just think it's a very good policy to provide coverage for their employees if they can afford it. But it will be more expensive under Obamacare because everybody has to cover all of these 10 essential health benefits that are required under the law, and that has just made policies, everybody's policy, more expensive. So, I think there's going to be, the other shoe is going to drop, and a lot of people who have employer-sponsored coverage who think that they have not been touched by Obamacare are going to find themselves touched.
Let me go to Larry in Kansas. Hey, Larry.
Yeah.
Yeah, what's your question? Yeah, go ahead, Larry.
Thank you for taking my call,
Sure.
Dan and Twyla.
Sure.
My question is something that I heard about a couple of months ago that was hidden in Obamacare that to me has nothing to do with Obamacare, with health care, and it is quite alarming to me because to me it would be a bid for dictatorship if it is true. And the question is about there was supposedly a provision hidden in Obamacare that allowed for this administration to fund his own private military or army. I would like to know if that is true, and if so, Twyla, could you expound upon that, please? Thank you.
Thanks, Larry.
Not specifically. There are some new, I haven't actually talked about this for a while, and so I'm just trying to come up with the name of this, but it's essentially a new health corps, and more people who can be called upon by the government to provide medical care, and nothing has really much happened with this provision, and it's sort of been out of sight and not talked about a lot, so I'm not going to be able to expound on it, but there is a provision in there where the president could be able to call up more healthcare troops, as it were, to help, and then they would be more under federal government than under hospitals and clinics and that sort of thing. So it would be much more a public government thing than a private, and that did cause some angst during the whole enactment looking at that provision. So far, nothing has come out of it, and so there's not a lot to say about it at the moment.
And I would say that the bloggers and others have had a field day with that provision, by the way. And right now, the way I understand it, and I have read that provision some time ago, that it really talks as it relates to healthcare. I first thought it was in the enforcement of healthcare, and that's not how I read it. I read it as what Twyla said. It is to call in federal healthcare workers to participate in this, and I kind of feel like it's almost irrelevant because at some point in time, if this continues, we're going to be socialized medicine. It's going to be federally owned and federally. We're going to see lots of federal workers involved in it.
I think the concern that a lot of us had about that provision is just, if the private workers were refusing to do certain things or were not acting the way the government thought they should be acting, that there was this ability of the federal government to start bringing a new cast and crew of federal workers to do their bidding, whether that was, taking over clinics or not prescribing certain medications that the private entities wanted to prescribe, or building separate clinics. It's kind of vague.
Very vague. Yeah. Let me go to Joel. Joel in Virginia. Hey, Joel.
Hey, good morning, Dan. Good morning, Paula. I thank you guys for what you do.
Thank you.
The two questions. One, the hardship provision ends in October of 2016, I believe. And so I kind of wanted to know, Since they just put it on ice for now, how's it going to? What kind of repercussions do you think that'll have in 2016? And then the question with that goes right along with it. With that hardship provision, is there any small businesses that could claim that hardship provision because they're their own entity? Could they claim a hardship provision as well? Thanks, guys.
Good question. Thanks, Joel.
So just to be very clear, in the law itself, there are 9 exemptions to the mandate and to the penalty. There's actually 4 exemptions to the mandate to purchase coverage, and there are 5 exemptions to paying the penalty. So, for instance, American Indians are required to buy health insurance under the mandate, although the Supreme Court said you couldn't be required, but beside the fact. But they are exempt under the penalty. So, although they're required, they can't be penalized. So there are 9 exemptions, but then the last exemption of those 9 is called the hardship waiver, the hardship exemption. And there are now 14 hardship waiver exemptions. And so there are 14 reasons why the Secretary of Health and Human Services can waive your responsibility for buying coverage or being taxed. And the 14th, the last hardship exemption now, is an open door. It's a sort of catch-all. Anybody can apply to have this hardship because they experience, I think the wording is something like any other hardship that makes it difficult for you to buy health insurance. And then when there's a column that says, documentation required, and in that column for this 14th hardship exemption, it says, please provide documentation if possible. It's the only one where it says please of all the 14, and it's the only one where it says if possible. So it's really a very, we called it a get-out-of-jail-free card. Mm-hmm. So anybody can apply for this. Now, the thing about the exemptions, the hardship exemptions, is that it's the Secretary of Health and Human Services who has the power under the law to decide to put out these hardship exemptions. So she also has the power to retract them. So it's possible at any time that the president could decide that that 14th exemption needs to be withdrawn.
Well, that's a good
point.
But
I don't think it will happen.
Yeah, good point. Now, could it include a small business who says this is a hardship for me?
Well, I don't think so, because if you look at the application, it really is all about an individual.
Yeah.
But just imagine the Secretary of Human Services getting 12 million people who put in this request. How exactly are they going to even deal with this? Right?
Yeah, well, great.
But I don't think businesses can. But all their employees could.
Okay. Let me go to Susan in Arkansas. Go ahead, Susan, real quick.
Oh, hi. Thanks so much for taking my call.
Sure.
I know how the administration parses words on their legislation and laws and stuff. And in the most recent delay or setback that was at least announced last Friday was for people who had their insurance canceled. They now have until 2016 without penalty.
Right.
But my question is, if people have not had insurance because they couldn't afford it in the first place, am I correct in understanding that this most recent delay does not apply to them since they didn't have insurance that was canceled? They couldn't afford it in the first place. Am I correct in that understanding?
That is correct, but I think that's why there's the 14th exemption, because it's for everybody else. So it's although they announced it, they actually announced it at the end of December, and they announced that that anybody whose policy was canceled was exempt until that period, but they didn't really announce the 14th exemption. But it was on the application form. It had appeared on the application form. They didn't announce it. And a lot of people think, experts think, that the reason that is because they couldn't afford politically to take one entire class of people, those who were canceled, and say, well, you're exempt, and not not actually look at all the people who haven't been able to afford it, all the uninsured and everybody else who cannot afford it under Obamacare because it's even more expensive, and say, no, you have to pay the penalty. But if you had a policy before and it was canceled, those people don't have to pay a penalty. Politically, it doesn't fly very well.
Twyla, real
That's
quick. Real quick. So, if you have to fill out the application in order to get to the 14th exemption and declare you're exempt, right?
Yeah.
Okay.
That is, I think, problematic.
Yeah.
Because it's putting all that data in that database.
Exactly. That's what I was getting to. Yep. Yeah. Interesting. Twyla Brace, president of Citizens Council for Health Freedom. Make sure if you have further questions, maybe you can email her through her website. I'm not sure, but you can get the newsletter that's going to keep you updated. cchfreedom.org. cchfreedom.org. Twyla will be here again next month. If something breaks, we'll have her before the third Thursday, but she'll be here on the third Thursday of next month. Twyla, thank you so much. I sure appreciate it. Have a great day.
Dan.
You're welcome. You've been listening to Financial Issues. I'm Dan Celia. We're going to get to your financial questions if you want to queue them up. 866-300-9298. Financial Issues, helping you be the best steward you can be.
American Family Radio.
AFR Talk.